Well, the energizing cycle says his love motivates her respect, and her respect motivates his love. His love motivates her respect, and her respect motivates his love. So, his love motivates what? No, it doesn't. You remind me of the pastor who had about 30 children up on the podium for the children's sermon. And the pastor said, "Children, what has a fluffy tail, eats nuts, scurries along the ground, and climbs trees?" A little 5-year-old boy raised his hand and said, "Pastor, I know the answer is Jesus, but it sounds like a squirrel to me." When you're in church, the answer is Jesus. But his reality, his experience was, that's a squirrel. Well, you're at a love and respect conference, so when I say his love motivates her respect, you know that's the right answer, but your reality is his love motivates love. And then her love is to motivate his love, and then his love motivates her love, and we'll all be happy. That's the culture. That's the belief of the cultures. What we become, some have called a love-dominated culture. And as we've said, the Beatles sang, all you need is love. And we have come to a point in this culture at the level of intimacy where we really believe that. Now, what I'm going to share with you in this session is how you spell love to a woman. The exciting thing and unique thing here is that she's going to translate her positive energy into what we call respect talk and respect actions. No one's really extended this challenge to her, and so we're thrilled with the opportunity to do that. Gentlemen, you're going to hear some things that you've been hearing before, but we're going to challenge you along a couple lines. One, when you do this, she's not going to necessarily respond now in love, but she's going to be conscious of seeking to do things that would meet your need to feel respect. She'll go, oh, it's so wonderful. But then she'll think consciously and willfully about doing some things that are going to meet some of your deeper needs. This is a foreign subject to her, but she's going to learn a few vocabulary words, and it's going to make some real wonderful moments between the two of you, not unlike you experienced when you courted, given you had a good courtship. I'm also going to say to you men that I'm going to challenge you from a different standpoint. I think we made a major mistake today with men. In fact, Dr. Dobson has been very supportive. They are sponsoring our conferences. And he said he missed it. He said most of us who are experts in the family have missed it. There are two sides to the coin, love and respect. We've basically been dumping on men for the last 40 years. And he said, we who make film series, myself included, we who write books, myself included, we who have radio programs, myself included, have missed it. And you may have known that when we were on that program for 2 days in 2003, it was the #1 responded to program. And men were pulling their cars over to the side of the road crying. They had 50,000 downloads within hours of that message. They had something like 19,000 responses within hours. It was an incredible response because there's a felt need. But one of the mistakes we've made is that we've made men feel that they need to be effeminate. We've told men to get in tune with their effeminate side. But we don't tell women to get in tune with their masculine side. We have become extremely biased against men and who they are in this culture. Not because we're mean-spirited about that. There is a deep-seated belief that men have a serious problem and they need to change. And your sons are going to change even if we have to medicate them at age 6. We will change them because there's something wrong with them. Now that's a broad statement and it's a generalized statement. But there's a nugget of truth in it that all of us are haunted, that somehow as a culture we have shifted in our thinking. And part of what I want to say to you men is you are men of honor, and you would die for your wife and your family. And the challenge I'm going to extend to you right now is not to become pink. It's not to put on a pink apron. God didn't make you female, and you're not to get in tune with your feminine side because you don't have it there. He made you male. And the way in which you become a loving man is choosing to do something that's never going to be natural. It is never natural for me to turn towards Sarah and say, I am sorry, will you forgive me for coming across unloving? But I do that because it takes guts, and only men of honor do it. But I'll never feel natural about doing that. It will never feel natural. And I'm going to share some things with you now that will never be natural, but you do it because you are a man. And you do it because you're a man of honor. And I'm also going to share something with you. Most of you men here, if you were in Vietnam or if you were in Afghanistan or you were in Iraq, you know that your best buddy, if you grew up with and you both joined the army together and he was wounded. And I know in Vietnam, the Viet Cong would wound an American soldier because they knew the loyalty of the soldiers. And so they'd wound them intentionally to leave an American soldier laying there in pain because they knew that their friends would come. And oftentimes it would go down like this: Joe's been hit. I gotta go. I'm going. Who's going with me? If nobody's going, I'm going by myself. And they would go in a diamond formation up over a unit. Bam! He'd get his head blown right off. Kill him right there. But I'm going to tell you something. Men of honor who mutually respect one another. Out of that mutual respect comes a deep affection for one another. When we deeply honor and respect one another, we feel deep affection. And our boyhood buddy, when he's out there wounded, we mutually respected one another. We believed in one another. We admired one another. We dreamed together. And as a result of that, there was deep affection, so much affection that he could not go. And he was compelled to go over the hill and die. Here's a point I want to make to you. It is easier for a man to die for honor than to turn toward a person who has contempt in their soul toward who he is as a human being, and for him to look face to face and say, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? When there is a despising, dark, sour look, it is easier for most men in this room to literally give their lives than to move toward that and say, I'm sorry, toward a person who despises and disrespects who they are. So what would motivate me to do that? Only men of honor do it. And they're never going to be pink. Pink men is a contradiction. God has made you blue. And so I'm going to challenge you now to be a loving man because you're a man of honor. And what I'm going to share with you will never be natural, and that's okay. I give you permission at this moment to experience this feeling. It is okay for me to feel that this is never natural. Why do you think God commanded you to be loving? Because He didn't create you to do it naturally, so you're under divine imperative. And when God looks at you, He knows it will never be natural. Just as you women, we're going to share in our next session that you will never feel respect naturally in the face of someone who is not loving you tenderly. It will never be there. It's not within your nature to feel it. And that's okay. God doesn't expect you to feel it. But because you're a loving person, you seek to do the loving thing by meeting another person's need, a need that you don't have. And as a loving woman, you meet his need for respect. And as a man of respect, you meet her need for love. And it will never be easy, but it's full of power. So men, how do you spell love to your wife? How do we spell love to your wife? I looked at every passage in the Bible that deals with marriage. And one of the things that I'm excited about, though I have a master's in communication and a PhD in family-related studies, as I mentioned, I studied the Bible 30 hours a week for nearly 20 years. And I had the privilege then, and some people say, why do you have that many hours a week? Because I was slow, okay? Come on, he's slow. Other pastors are quicker. He just needs more time. But I had the privilege of going from Genesis through Revelation, looking at every passage that dealt with marriage. Many of us who are trained in the secular studies love our systems. We love conflict resolution. We love all the kinds of stuff that our systems teach us. And then one day we're asked to speak in a church. Oh, I'm going to be speaking to that Sunday school class. I'm going to teach them some of my principles. But I better have some Bible verses that back this up. So they started going through the Bible looking for verses. It's called proof texting. I know what I'm going to say. Now I'm going to look for proof of that in the Bible. That's not the way we want to do this. We who are followers of Christ. You begin with what we call the Word of Christ. Christ said, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. So we begin with what has been revealed. Now, if you're an unchurched person and you're still seeking, I understand that. I was not a believer for many years. My mom and dad were not believers. My brother-in-law, who's a professor, was not a believer. My sister. But we all came to Christ as adults. So I'm sensitive to you, but again, I'm preaching to the choir, but I want to invite you to listen to the music, and maybe at some point you'll be like my family. You'll want to hear more of the words. but you also have a felt need, and maybe you've been offended. We apologize to you. We feel badly. My dad was deeply offended by the Christian community in his early upbringing. I understand that. I understand that. So I hope that you'll give me grace as we proceed in this. But one of the things that we have come to is we start with Scripture rather than with our systems. And you'll see people who have their academic background say, well, oh, here's a passage in Philippians. Do not look out for your own interests, but also the interests of others. That's a great text, but it doesn't have anything to do with marriage. It can be applied to marriage if you want to, but that's not the point of the text. So then I thought, Lord, have you revealed something in your word about marriage? And I was stunned with all the Scripture that is applied to marriage. So then I tried to figure out what applies to maybe just the nation of Israel versus to the church, and what applies today to all of us. And what I'm about to share with you are principles and concepts related to marriage that apply to us. And I believe these are the most potent and the most salient, as I say, Scriptures. But let me give you an overview of where we're going to go, and you have that. What is a husband's love? And I'm going to give you that overview, and then I'll come back to that. But here it is, gentlemen. Here's what it means to be a man of honor and how to love. When you want to be with her face to face, when you aren't secretly mad at her, when you empathize with her, when you resolve and reconcile with her, when you are completely committed to her, and when you treasure her above all else. Now, gentlemen, is anybody going to do this perfectly, yes or no? We're not going to do this perfectly. I love Proverbs 24:16. A righteous man falls 7 times, but arises again. So we're going to challenge you and encourage you that you can rebound. In fact, playing basketball, sometimes you can go up, shoot, and you know it's not going to go in, but you can get the angle best, and you see the angle, so you go over and get your own rebound, grab your own rebound, go up again, get fouled, and go to the line, plus having swished it, so you get a 3-point play on the rebound. You can score sometimes more on the rebound. Look, you're the one coming up with that meaning, not me. I'm not. That was a pink statement, and blue interpreted it. But the point is, you can fail and actually make a greater impact. And I want you to understand that you can rebound. You will never be perfect. You'll never do this ideally. So what I've just stated here is the goal, is the standard, so to speak. And we're going to blow it. I blow it. But you can do these things, and we'll explain how you do this. Now, I want to give you a little simple acronym. C-O-U-P-L-E, couple, C-O-U-P-L-E. And every one of these letters represents a key Scripture. And you'll also see the social sciences that I incorporate and integrate into this thing, which is mind-boggling in my view. It's just so exciting to see. And so you have these letters. And I want you to think, though, of a photograph of the two of you. And suppose that photograph gets ripped. Your wife is going to do everything she can to tape it back together, to couple it back together, to connect. See, the idea of connecting is a huge, huge value to women, to connect. You'll hear women want to connect. And when I was getting my PhD, most of the women, well, most of in the class were women, and I remember one day we were talking about ideas and concepts, and the word connectivity surfaced. And the women in that classroom went through the roof with energy. Oh, to connect. To connect, connectivity. And there was this energy, and I'm saying, wait a minute, can you give me a measured definition of this? Can you help me understand what this concept is? We don't have one. I said, we're all PhD candidates here. What do you mean you don't have one? We just know when it's present and we know when it's not. I said, that helps me out a lot. But since then, I've thought a lot about why that subjective feeling was going on there without a definition. They just intuitively know when they're connected and when they're not. I'm going to share with you what women believe and mean by this when we say C-O-U-P-L-E. In fact, she will confront to connect. In our blue world, it feels like she confronts to control. And that's why we say she's trying to wear the pants or she's trying to pick a fight, and why there's so much confusion. Because if a man approached us the way she does, he'd be picking a fight. So we tend to conclude that. But we know she's not mean, so we just say, leave me alone. Drop it, forget it, you know? And she's thinking, what planet are you from? All I want to do is connect. I just want us to resolve this thing and talk it through. What do you mean? I'm trying to pick a fight. It's all about you. And we need to be encouraged that we're not alone in these exchanges. Whenever you see laughter, just realize you are not messed up. Don't you move into this feeling that we've made a mistake. You have not made a mistake. You can experience wonderful things. Now, C-O-U-P-L-E, then let's begin with C. What does the C represent? Closeness. Closeness. Being close to her face to face. Genesis 2:24. For this cause a man shall leave his father and his mother and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. Again, Genesis 2:24, this is a salient passage. For this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife, and they shall become one flesh. The idea of cleave in Hebrew is a glue, just permanently glue. It will not come apart, so to speak. You know something? Do you know that human beings are the only creatures that are sexually intimate face to face? No other creature is sexually intimate face to face. You, my friend, are created in the image of God. You, as a human being, donkeys and animals are not created in His image. You have been created in the image of God. Male and female, He made them in His image. And He has given us certain visual aids, one of which is this. And He created the wife to cleave to the husband and the husband to cleave to the wife. And she, in a sense, echoes him. She wants to be face to face. God designed it within a female, a woman, a human being in His image to want to be face to face with her husband. It's something within her needs that. He's designed that within her. She longs for that. And that closeness is a huge value to her. Listen to Genesis 29:34. My husband will become attached to me. See that closeness, that proximity? Genesis 30:20. My husband will dwell with me. Or listen to Song of Solomon 3:4. When I found him whom my soul loves, I held on to him and would not let him go. And then you see a refrain in Song of Solomon 2:6 and also 8:3. Let his left hand be under my head and his right hand embrace me. Now in your notebook you'll see some smaller font that there are exceptions to this. For instance, Proverbs 7:11. She is boisterous and rebellious. Her feet do not remain at home. Not every woman wants that. There is no absolute teaching on this. But generally, women who are in love with their husbands and love to love and want that intimate relationship with that man, she wants that closeness. I love Deuteronomy 24:5. The Hebrews were a people of great wisdom. And it said this, when a man takes a new wife, he shall not go out with the army nor be charged with any duty. He shall be free at home 1 year and shall give happiness to his wife whom he has taken. Why? Well, the Hebrews understood that she had needs that he didn't have. In that first year of marriage, with all the emotions, all the things that women feel, and all the adjustments, leaving her father, I mean, there's so many things going on, that they said, you be with her for that first year. Don't go out to be with the army. Be with her and make her happy. And at the end of the year, then you go out to war and die. I want you to think of cappuccino cafes across America or Starbucks across the street from here. And do they have long tables in those cafes or do they have little round ones? Well, they have little round ones. And do you have about 2 or 3 men in off the construction site, about 6'10", 6'8", 6'4", each weighing about 280 pounds, seated around those little tables, pouring the coffee and having the doilies, and Harry saying to Jim, how are things on the construction site, Jim? Tell me your feelings. How are things going? Let's talk about it. You won't see that. Instead, you'll see 2 or 3 women seated around those tables, talking face to face, elbow on the table, face to face, talking. It's called giving the report to build rapport. It's been researched. Women connect face to face, eye to eye, and they tell their stories. And the longer that friendship is, they have the stories continue on. It's the way God has wired them. Not wrong, just different. They've done infant research, and it's been powerful because the whole nature-nurture thing is a big debated issue. And so, you know, which came first, the chicken or the egg? And they're always trying to explore that. My answer is yes, you know. But the infant girl they bring out of the womb, they wanted to see what would happen. So she was born, and then they put her in a crib, and then they had adults stand around her, and then her little eyes would open up. And they wanted to see what she would do. And the face is looking at her, and she would look up and make contact with the human face almost 100% of the time. And then they had an infant boy born and did the same thing, put him in the crib, and they had adults around the crib and looking at him, and he'd look up when his eyes open, and he'd make eye contact with the human face until he saw the ceiling fan. We know that, don't we? But we don't know that. There's something within your boy and his nature. There's something within your daughter and her nature. I hope your son-in-law understands the nature of your daughter, because she's going to want to have eye-to-eye contact. When my daughter was 4, I was pastoring in Michigan, and you know, it'd get dark in the middle of the winter really quick, and you'd put her down to bed, you know, and I'd take her into the bedroom, we'd shut the door, and the lights are out. There's no lights outside the window, so it's pitch black. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. And little Joy, she just loves to talk. She'd talk, 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 and I'd just be laying there kind of talking. You know, sometimes I'd fall asleep kind of thing, and she'd just be talking, 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 talking. One night, can't see a thing. She says, "Daddy, look at me." And then her little hands. Already at 4, she had concluded if I wasn't looking, I wasn't. You see how this works? There's something within your nature. You knew that sentence just like that. Because as a woman, if you're listening, you look. If you look, you're listening. If you don't look, you're not listening. And if you're not listening, it's because you're not looking. It's within your nature. Women can't not look. And you feel very comfortable looking. You want to do that. It's within your nature. Not wrong, just different. It's interesting that if you look at alpha males in the wolf pack, and you have the senior alpha male, and then you have some younger alpha males, how do the younger alpha males relate to the senior alpha male? They won't look at him. They'll glance, but they'll cower, and they look away. They look away. They look away. They make a statement. I don't want to take you on. I'm doing the honorable thing. I don't look at you. Joggers will tell me, who are marathoners, if they're running through neighborhoods or whatever and there's a dog coming full speed, they say just keep looking straight ahead. Do not look at the dog. Do not square off and look at the dog. If you don't look at the dog and just keep running, the dog will come up, but he'll stop at the last second because he's territorial. But you're making a statement by not looking at him. And the statement is, I respect you. I'm looking away from you. I'm not taking you on. I'm not picking a fight with you. I'm not moving in on your territory. Now, there's an interesting implication of that. In marriage, when you get into a fight, your wife is moving towards you, looking at you. And let me tell you, the daughter that you have, her heart is simple. She's seeking to do the loving thing. She feels unloved, so she's seeking to do the loving thing by moving toward. We need to talk. We need to talk right now. Sit down and talk. Look at me. Only to be interpreted as disrespectful. During that same conflict, your husband keeps looking away, and even sometimes moving away, but looking away. Why? Because he's seeking to do the respectful thing, the honorable thing, but he's interpreted as unloving. You see a little 6-year-old boy on the school ground, and he's playing kickball, and he's running around home plate after he kicked it, and he's trying to get home before he's going to get thrown out, and a little girl happens to walk in front of him, and he knocks her down. I remember that because that's what happened to me. I still remember the scene. Bam! I just knocked this little girl down. And the teacher grabbed me. And I mean, the little girl was crying. I feel horrible. I was just trying to score. I saw last time, and I'm knocking her down. I just, bam, But if you let a little boy apologize, today, the teachers, female teachers, you look at her and you tell Sally you're sorry. Look at her. Look at her. Look. Say, look at it. Look. Say you're sorry. If you don't, you're going to get drugged. Just a joke. I think it's a joke. But if you let that little 6-year-old boy say, I'm sorry the way God made him, watch what he'll do. You tell Sally that you're sorry. I'm sorry. He's doing the honorable thing as he does the loving thing. God made him this way. God made him this way. But God made a woman differently. And as a man of honor, it isn't going to be easy to turn toward her when she's coming at us in a way that we feel is disrespectful, and for us to actually make eye contact and say, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? It isn't within our nature. It is easier for us to die for honor and love and affection toward my boyhood buddy than it is for me to turn toward a woman who looks like she despises everything there is about me. And you expect me to say to her, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? It isn't natural. That's right, it's not. But watch what happens. Watch what happens. We'll explain that in a moment. But there's power here, and every woman knows what would happen. Every woman knows what will happen. But let me listen into this couple called Missy and Stu, and they're a volatile couple, and they get very excited. Most couples are avoidant. We used to think that people who were volatile had bad marriages, but now we realize volatility is not the key factor to the collapse of a relationship. Actually, avoidant couples, their relationships collapse. More probably because you avoid, and then you have this huge explosion, and you've made no deposits, and you make a huge withdrawal, and you bankrupt the relationship. Volatile people are making huge withdrawals on Friday night, huge fight. But Saturday they're dancing, Sunday they're in a Bible study, Sunday morning they confess to one another, got all emotional with one another, Monday they get in another fight, Tuesday they confess again, and then when they're fighting, he says, you're gorgeous when you're mad, you know, and they're saying, they're doing a whole bunch of things that it looks like the relationship's collapsing, but they're making more deposits than they are withdrawals. And they're not bankrupt. Some of you aren't making a lot of withdrawals in an evil way, but you ain't making no deposits. This couple, Missy and Stu, are volatile. Missy asks, can we be together tonight to talk? Stu reacts, what's with you, Missy? We just went out a couple nights ago to the Disney movie. We had dinner with the Smiths at the country club, and last week we went to the zoo with the kids. You're never satisfied. What do you want? What do you want from me? Are we to be Siamese twins? Give me a break. Well, they're going to spin on the crazy cycle. You see, because she's asking for face-to-face alone time with him. Notice the activities. They went out to the Disney movie, but that was a shoulder-to-shoulder thing. Had dinner with the Smiths, and that was a social thing, and went to the zoo with the kids. That's a social thing. She didn't have any time with him alone, and that's a huge value to her. That's how she spells love. In fact, when she feels that you don't want to be close with her face-to-face, she reacts. You're stepping on her air hose. Unfortunately, if that keeps going, she'll react in disrespectful ways, and it's very difficult at times for us to decode that she's actually wanting to be close to us because she needs our love. We think this is just another platform she's using to send a message to me that she doesn't respect who I am as a human being. And we missed our heart. And why wouldn't we miss our heart? Naturally, we would miss our heart. So that's why we need to put the super on the natural at times. And have a supernatural view here of seeing it as God sees it. And pray that your son-in-law sees it about your precious daughter. Refusing to be alone face to face is an emotional killer to her. And let me say, gentlemen, we don't have a need for a lot of face-to-face, intimate time, sharing a ton of reports to build rapport. Particularly if it's the same story over and over again. But she has a need that we'll explain to you in a moment that you don't have. Is that okay? She has a need that you don't have. Not wrong, just different. So one of the things you can do is figure out, she's been reacting disrespectfully to me and I don't deserve this. Well, decode. Maybe she's faintly praising you by just saying, I need to be with you alone because you matter to me more than any adult at the intimate level. That's all I'm trying to say to you. I feel like you're stepping on my air hose and I'm not even aware of the fact that I'm stepping on your air hose in response. In fact, one guy said, I've made a decision. I made a decision to be close to my wife. I hold her hand everywhere we go because when I let go, she shops. Now, this doesn't mean face-to-face, hour after hour, every day. In some ways, it's more frequency than is length. Giving her 15 minutes a day kind of a thing. It isn't, she's not asking for hour upon hour. It feels like that when she hasn't had it. Suddenly there's this moment when, she just dumps it all. But if you give her, Sarah and I used to, in different seasons of life, when the kids were little, every day after the evening meal, we'd shut the door for 15 minutes, and that was Mom and Dad's time. And the kids would pound on the door, and they would do things to always try to get us out. Kids are going to do, but we knew they felt secure, even though they were irritating us. But it's frequency, not length. And if she can predict it, one of the things that Sarah and I did, we introduced a certain time where Sarah would have that face-to-face time. What she was doing up until we had that, she was trying to access me during those transitional moments, trying not to bother me because I was thinking of different things. So then she would bring up things that were serious to me as I was on the way out, and that just irritated me. But once she had the predictable time, then she saved her lists. And then we'd go out or whatever, and she'd go down through it, and she'd feel better. It really took attention out. But we're not talking hour on hour. We're talking a few minutes every day, face to face, because she has a need that you don't have. And is that okay? That you would actually, as a man of honor, meet a need that you don't have, and a wife who's a good-willed woman who's going to take care of you if you have a stroke and are in a wheelchair. And that hypersensitivity that you see in her is going to be the thing that you're drooling like this in a chair. What does he want? Oh, he needs water. She's going to know everything you need because of that hypersensitivity. Thank God for that. Every weakness has a front-sided strength. That women love to see people who are close and face-to-face. In fact, this one couple, they'd been married 30 years. They went in the restaurant. They saw this couple, she did, over in the corner. She knew they'd been married for many years, and they were in the same booth together. He had his arm around her. Women gravitate. It's like a magnet. They see couples like that. She's just fixated on this couple. He's got his arm around her. He's whispering sweet nothing. She's laughing. He's laughing. They're face-to-face. She is just enthralled with this. She says to her husband, look at that couple over there. He's eating what? That couple over there. Yeah, what about him? Well, look at how he's got his arm around her and he's talking to her face to face and close to close. Yeah? Well, why don't you ever do that? Look, I don't even know that woman. C is closeness, that face-to-face closeness. That's how you spell love. If your wife is reacting in disrespectful ways, ask yourself, decode on the marital bus ride, is she just crying out for face-to-face alone time with me? Yeah, she has a need you don't have. But you made a vow and a commitment to this woman. Is she a good-willed woman? Can you meet that a few minutes every day because she has a need that you don't have? And can you look at her sometimes? And do you have the guts to look at her, particularly if she's coming across in a way that's disrespectful? It ain't easy. It's never easy for me. So if I got to suffer, you suffer. So C is closeness. O is openness. Openness, not being secretly mad at her. Colossians 3:19, husbands, love your wives and do not be embittered against them. That is the only negative in the New Testament against husbands, per se. Colossians 3:19. And that's all he said to the husbands at Colossae. Husbands, love your wives, agape love, and do not be embittered against them. The opposite of love in this case is that embittered husband. I see this as that internal anger, that secretly mad, kind of grinding the teeth and just looking at her with resentment as you walk away. Can't treat me this way. I'm not going to love you until you start respecting me. See how ineffective that is? But that's what we're trying to say to her. And we get angry at her. We're secretly mad. And that's a killer to women. Dr. Deborah Tannen, the great linguist, secular linguist, talked about how women in the business arena, plus in general, personalize things far more than men do. They've studied women in the work arena. When there's conflict among women, the women will personalize that, and then they need to talk it through. They need to say they're sorry. They need to seek one another's forgiveness. They need to reassure one another, and it takes time to do that. And they feel that's very natural, that's very normal, and that's what women do. But then the women would see these men get into conflicts, and the men didn't say they were sorry, they didn't seek forgiveness, they'd go out and play golf, and they didn't seem to have any root of bitterness toward one another, but no one ever said they were sorry, yet they were coming at one another. That's because men weren't personalizing it. Men banter and debate, and it's more about the ideas, and they like to have one-upmanship, and it's kind of a game at times. Even though they're angry at one another, they're really not angry at one another. But women will personalize. And that happens in the marriage as well. So you can be angry, maybe not even about her, but if you're quiet about it and you're simmering, she will tend to personalize it. What did I say to him? What did I do? Some women are very nervous. Your father's coming home. They personalize things. I've seen women through the years they talk about being on eggshells. I've never received any email from any man. I've received thousands of emails from women. I'm on eggshells. I've never had one from a man. I'm on eggshells. What happens with some men, though, I think they lose sight of the fact that inwardly they're angry because we are what we call compartmentalized. We can compartmentalize our emotions. Women are more integrated personalities. Their mind, body, soul, and spirit are all connected. So when a woman's spirit is wounded, it'll display itself out her face. One of my female professors once was very upset, and she said, well, forgive me, I wear my emotions on my sleeves. I said, Doc, you know your psychology. You're an integrated personality. Your mind, body, soul, and spirit are connected. So when something happens that wounds your spirit, it's going to display itself out of your countenance. That's the strength of womanhood. You're expressive, responsive. She said, you're right. That's right. This is exactly how I feel. Men, on the other hand, can compartmentalize. We can shove our fears, our emotions into compartments. And there's strengths and weakness on both of these. Women can be hypersensitive, but at the same time, they can be so sensitive that they care and nurture for people who are in need, and they're right there. Men can compartmentalize, which we can shove our emotions into compartments and not let you know. But we can also shove those emotions into compartments and march right to our death, dying for you. I was in Manhattan on 9/11. And 99% of those who went back into the Twin Towers were men. Men can shove their fears into compartments and go right to their death. And they do it all the time. That is an incredible strength. And I believe God has created women to have a little bit more of a fear. Women struggle with fear because He wants the women to pull back for the 4-year-old and 5-year-old who's standing on the street corner. She goes back to the kids while he marches. That's generally the way it's always been. We did the inaugural cruise for Focus on the Family. In the first 15 minutes you're on the ship, they take everybody on the side of the ship and say, here's what you do in case it goes down. It's always reassuring. So they run this drill, right? And over the loudspeakers, okay, women and children go first. There wasn't one feminist who screamed, that ain't fair! And all of us men, we had those orange life preservers on. Yes, we die. It's still being said in the 21st century. There's something within that man. But the point is, he can compartmentalize, and as a result of that, gentlemen, when you get upset or angry, and you can put it, and she's trying to figure you out, and you may not even know what's going on in your own soul, and that's why I think Malachi parallels this. He challenges men in 2:14 and 15, a salient passage. The Lord has been a witness between you and the wife of your youth, against whom you have dealt treacherously, though she's your companion and your wife by covenant. Take heed then to your spirit, and let no one deal treacherously against the wife of your youth. But that phrase, take heed then to your spirit. Gentlemen, do you know what's going on inside of you? If you are embittered, this is going to be a killer to your marriage. It won't motivate her to be more respectful. She will feel so unloved, and then she'll react in ways that are even more disrespectful, and this thing gets crazy exponentially. And some of you are triggering this thing out of control, but you can stop it by getting in tune. In fact, it may not even be that you're upset with her and she's personalizing inappropriately. Listening to Missy and Stu has nothing to do with Missy. Feeling frustrated and angry over losing $8,000 on an investment, Stu says in response to Missy's request to talk, now what's your problem? All you're going to do is complain about something, I'm sure. You're too negative. I'm tired of this. So he turns on the news. She tries again later to bring up some things about his day, but he only says, I don't want to talk about it. Can't we just have some peace and quiet around here? See, she's trying to connect. She's moving forward. She senses something's upsetting him, and she's needing reassurance. That's just the way her nature is. She moves toward. She wants to connect. She just needs reassurance that everything's okay. And in this case, it isn't about her. He's feeling like an idiot. A lot of you guys think, I don't want to bother her with what's bothering me. Well, you're going to bother her when you don't bother her with what's bothering you. In fact, when you shove your emotions into compartments, you become this mysterious island that women stand forever paddling around him, but he won't permit me to land. I'm going to tell you, the more she loves you and cares about you, she's ramming that canoe right up the shoreline. She's going to come ashore because you matter to her. That's just her nature. She moves toward you, not away from you. That's why she says, can we talk? She's trying to pull you out. In fact, what's interesting, did you know that a wife wants to talk about the marital problems you're having? If you're having daily marital problems, she wants to talk about those daily problems on a daily basis to keep the relationship up to date in order to prevent a major marital problem. Right, ladies? If you're having marital problems on a daily basis, she'd like to talk about those on a daily basis to keep the relationship up to date to prevent major marital problems. That's pink. Here's blue. If you've got daily marital problems that you're talking about on a daily basis, that means you've got a major marital problem. Now, gentlemen, you and I tend not to have a need to talk on a daily basis about marital problems. We don't have a need, but she has a need that we don't have. Sarah has a need that I don't have. And I had to come to a point where I realized that's okay. I think about my issues. I don't necessarily want to talk about them because that's redundant. But as a man of honor, I believe God is calling me to be more open, especially when I'm angry. I've got to reassure her that it's not directed toward her. And if I am embittered toward her, a good-willed woman, what's wrong with this picture? Why would I? And that's why Paul says, don't be embittered. He didn't justify that embitterness. He's assuming that in the case of most men, you're embittered toward a woman who's good-willed, and she's a great woman. She irritates you, yes, but there's no justification for being bitter toward her. And furthermore, she's probably irritating you simply because you have an honest misunderstanding. It's not because she's ill-willed. She upsets you. There are guys who are resentful toward their wives because she can't put the car in the garage straight. There are little issues like that that just send you through the roof because you think she's doing that intentionally just to provoke you. You're imputing ill will to her. You have passed judgment on her that she's up to just irritate you. And I'm going to tell you, highly unlikely. My dad used to be absolutely convinced. He and Mom are in heaven now, but Mom moved the keys. Purposely. Mom didn't move the keys purposely. There comes a moment when we let go of my feelings are not the voice of God. And it may just be on the marital bus ride that I'm projecting onto my spouse something that's just not factual. That's why the Bible says, let every fact be confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses. Jesus was very clear in the apostles. But today we're going on feelings. If I feel it, if it's my report and there's no facts, who cares? I'm right. I'm going to tell you that's the epitome of foolishness. And if our courts were that way, we would have Salem witch trials all over this country. But we made a decision as a culture, we're going to be far wiser than that. But yet we don't apply the very wisdom of a secular culture to Christian marriages. It's crucial that we come to a point where we deal with what is factual, not what I feel. And just because I feel offended does not mean that my spouse is offensive in fact. Now, what I have to do is come to a point where I believe that Sarah's not trying to interrogate me. Years ago, when Mom was still here, my dad had died and gone to heaven. Mom was about 83, and Sarah sent Mom and me on some errands. And we were to go to A, B, C, D, and E, and then be home for dinner. Well, Sarah called us, and we were still at B when we should have almost been walking through the door. And she started saying, where are you? What's wrong? And she started barraging me with all these questions. And I began to feel interrogated. I began to feel like I was a bad boy. Bad. And I know this stuff. And she's just asking question after question after question. And I said, okay, all right, all right. Mom and I stopped at a bar, okay? I'm in the car now. Mom's in the back seat. She won't sit up. Sit up, Mom. But I felt interrogated. I felt Sarah was spying me because she was asking all these questions to find out what was going on. And then one day I realized, how would Sarah ask questions of her best girlfriend who took my mom on a set of errands and was to be home. And I suddenly realized she asked her girlfriend to say, "Where are you? What's wrong?" And what would her best girlfriend say? "Oh, well, we went to the grocery store, you know, and you remember? And we left the grocery store, and then your mother-in-law forgot the ketchup, so we had to go back and get the ketchup. And, well, we started talking to that clerk, you know, she's going through a divorce, and she started sharing some of her concerns. And then, as we were standing there, your mother-in-law, she forgot the laundry, so we had to go by and pick that up. So we're probably going to be about 20 minutes late." "Oh, I'm so thankful. Nothing's really wrong." No, we'll be there. Okay, I'll put that." The day that I realized Sarah treats me the same way she treats everybody was an illuminating moment. She was not out, but getting up in the morning thinking, how can I irritate Emerson today? Now, it's not easy because I'm feeling like she's mothering me, and it's kind of like I want to say, I have one mother, thank you, I don't need another one. But she's not asking those questions somehow to be disrespectful toward me. She's needing reassurance that everything's okay. That's basically how she functions. And every woman that I've met tends to be that way. So is she reacting in a disrespectful way? Could it be that she's simply saying, you know, I want you to be more open with me? And we're never going to be as open as she is. It's more natural for her to be eye to eye, to be more open, to be more transparent. Her spirit's feeling, she immediately begins to speak and think. In fact, she will express her feelings through her words. She will begin to talk in order to discover what it is she's feeling. And we'll explain that in a moment. So it's very natural for her to want to communicate. It's just within her nature. So she moves toward. But as she does that, if I begin to think she's prying, she's spying, she's asking questions because she's suspicious of me, I've missed her heart. I've got to trust. And here's a little interesting thing. God hasn't made this complex. As a man is open with his wife emotionally, it does something to her spirit, and physically, sexually, she opens. And there's a visual aid. Her sexuality, she opens literally. And God has said, look, I don't want this to be too difficult to understand. That the way in which you touch the sexuality, for instance, of a woman is by being open with her in an authentic way in your spirit, not for the purpose of getting sex, but just authentically open, and it does something to her physiology, and she responds sexually. Now, it was interesting, 4 guys just woke up. What did he say? He said, I heard it, sex, I heard it, that's why I came. What did he say? Give me your notes, give me your notes. Where is it? Give it to me, give it. What did he say? How long has he been talking about this? So C is closeness, O is openness, U is understanding, understanding. Listen to Missy and Stu. Missy complains to Stu, the kids refused to go to bed the night you left for Kansas City. The phone rang at 11:30 p.m., which was a prank call and frightened me. Then the next day the electricity went out in the snowstorm, and on top of all of that, I put on 4 pounds from Christmas parties and I have nothing to wear. Stu, reading the Tribune, says, do you have to talk about this now? I'm trying to read the stock market listings. You're always interfering with my time. See, they're going to spin on the crazy cycle. She's needing empathy. She's needing understanding. Stu needed to understand what 1 Peter 3:7 says. You husbands likewise live with your wives in an understanding way, as with a weaker vessel, since she is a woman, so that your prayers may not be hindered. And I think Peter's speaking autobiographically here, because we know Jesus healed his mother-in-law. And I can almost envision then after Christ had been raised from the dead, Peter was praying one day and the Lord said, Peter, I'm not listening to you. But why, Lord? Your prayers are hindered, Peter. But why, Lord? Because you did not live in an understanding, empathetic way today with your wife. Go back and resolve that and come back and watch heaven open up. Now let me insert something very important here. Do you know that 1 Peter 3:7 is the verse that the feminist movement has attacked and why many feminists are not followers of Christ? They believe that the Bible teaches that women are the weaker sex, and they do so on the basis of this verse. And therefore, by implication, men are the stronger sex, and they've rejected that because it undermines the whole notion of equality. And they believe that Christianity is hostile toward women. And this is the text right here, and Peter is the central culprit. But let me share with you, not only as an academic person, but also as a pastor and Bible teacher. Let me share with you what this verse is saying, and see if it sounds too dissimilar ultimately to what the feminist movement is advocating as its prized virtues. You husbands likewise live with your wives in an understanding way, as with a weaker vessel. Oh, weaker vessel. Well, first of all, weaker vessel, that's a comparative statement, not a qualitative statement. What I mean is, it's not saying she's a weak vessel. It's not making a qualitative judgment saying women are weak. No, it's a comparative statement saying she's weaker. First point. Second point, it's not saying she's weaker in relationship to men. It's saying she's weaker in relationship to her husband. So there's something uniquely applied here to her in relationship to her husband. And then the text is very specific. It only announces two areas that she's more vulnerable, shall we say, to her husband, when he does not live with her in an understanding way, since she's a woman, does not understand her femininity. And then it goes on to say, does not honor her as a fellow heir of the grace of life. In other words, treating her as an equal. Has anybody heard in the feminist movement that women are victimized and not praised for their femininity? And has anybody heard some kind of an espousal that there needs to be equality for women? May I ask the question, what is the difference between what the feminist movement is saying and what Peter has just announced and declared here? Those of you who have been influenced by the women's studies, and you are lovers of Christ, and yet you've been haunted by certain portions of the New Testament, anything written that's not by Jesus or spoken by Jesus, may I just encourage you that it's not what you think. Very clearly, Peter's saying, Emerson, I've designed Sarah as a woman, and she has certain strengths and she has certain weaknesses. You have certain strengths and you have certain weaknesses. There are certain things within your nature that you're vulnerable to. There are certain things in her nature that she's vulnerable to. And when you live with her in a way that's not empathetic and understanding, she's too vulnerable to that. Her nature isn't designed by that. And also, Emerson, you are not more equal than her. I see her in the same light that I see you. That is what the heart of Christianity teaches. But let me go on to say then, in terms of a mistake that I made in relationship to Sarah's, I tend to be solution-oriented. So Sarah would come to me with a problem, and I would immediately kick into solution mode. And I learned one day that that wasn't working too well. So one day it dawned on me, I said, Sarah, do you need a solution or just a listening ear? I just need you to listen to me. That has saved us more fights and conflict. Do you need a listening ear or do you need a solution? Well, I don't need a solution. I just need you to listen to me. Whoa, that has healed. Gentlemen, when she comes to you with a problem, she's not coming to you often because she's needing a solution. I'm going to share with you what I call the 3 R's of communication for women. Why is it that women say communication is the key to marriage? Why do they say that, and what do they mean by that? They don't mean just simple exchange of information. They want to release their emotions. That's why they want to talk, because you're the burden bearer. You're the Christ figure, and she's the church figure, and she feels wonderful when she places her burden on you. We as men place our burden on Christ. What if when we placed our burden on Christ, the Lord said, you know, I'm fed up with this. You keep telling me the same thing week after week. I got more important things to do in the cosmos than listen to you again, sir. And you haven't done what I told you to do last time, so this is kind of pointless. What would we feel if we came to Christ and He rejected us that way? We are all feminine in relationship to Christ alone, who's masculine in that sense. Well, your wife is the church figure, and she feels wonderful after she places her burden on you. You are the Christ figure. There's just something within her nature that feels wonderful after she releases her emotions. She feels loved. It's just something that God has designed within her. She also needs to start talking about her emotions, because we're going to point out to her that as this integrated personality, she collects a ton of information, and she needs to sometimes start just talking, and as she gets it out, she begins to realize what it is she's feeling, and then she just feels better. It's kind of like a tea kettle that steams up, and then it just needs to release that emotion. She has a need for emotion release. Tomorrow I'm going to talk to her about you as a male needing sex release. You have a need, and your anatomy demonstrates it in a way that she doesn't. You have a need that she doesn't have, and I'm going to share with her, is that okay that he has a need that you don't have? And I'm saying to him now, she has a need for emotion release in a way that you don't have. Is that okay? Not wrong, just different. And coming to a point then that we realize, also, as I pointed out, she also wants to give the report, because as she gives the report, it builds rapport, and she feels connected. So it's what I call the 3 R's. She wants to release her emotion, she wants to realize her emotion, and she wants to report her emotion. And when that happens, she feels this rapport, she feels loved, she feels connected. You and I tend to see communication as the exchange of information. So when she says, can we talk? What she means by that is she meaning to release her emotion, she wants to talk about what she's feeling, she wants to just build a sense of rapport by small talk, which she will do with other women. You'll see them just small talk. Why? It's deeper than just what they're talking about. They're connecting at an emotional, spiritual level at times. But when she says, can we talk, you say about what? Because you see communication as the exchange of information. What do you want to talk about? And then she says, oh, I don't know. I just need to talk. And you're suspicious because you think she's going to talk about you but doesn't want to come out with it up front. Now, why is understanding this about her so important? Because of the way God has wired her. And I love the right brain, left brain research that has been developed. In fact, look at how a mother, her two children, a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old, come to her and they're tattling on one another. And watch what they do. They're both talking at the same time, and she'll lean down and they're both just tattling, going a mile a minute, you know, just talking. And she will listen to both of them. And then they'll both kind of quiet down, and then she will then respond to one, and that one will go off, and then watch her for a moment. She'll turn toward the other, and there's this glaze over her eyes for a moment as she's replaying what she heard the other one say. And then she'll respond to that. It's almost like she's able to record those two conversations simultaneously, and she can. She's hardwired that way. Watch what a father does when the two children come toward him. One at a time. Quiet. Go ahead. I said quiet. Quiet. Go ahead. I don't say it. Go ahead. Or what if you're in a room of 60 people and your wife is over here talking to her girlfriend and you're over here about 15 feet away talking to your best friend and you're saying, hey, we went to that Christian camp and they got a new director. His name is, your wife says, Robert Smith. She goes, how does she do that? Well, she's snooping. They're always snooping. No, no, no. They can just collect information. When I speak to women's groups at times and the women start getting really excited and then I'll take a break, women are so excited. They're both talking, everybody's talking and they're listening at the same time. They talk and listen at the same time. See, when she's on the phone at home, right? She's talking to best girlfriend and she's talking to her, plus no, put that on, she can do all this stuff, multitask, everybody, you know, she can talk. It's amazing. Watch it when we're on the phone. Quiet! Just a second, Harry. Quiet! Go ahead. So decode, is she reacting in disrespectful ways? Could it be that she's feeling that you don't want to be close to her, don't want to be open with her? She's trying to share with you burdens on her heart. She's trying to connect to you because you're her burden bearer. It's a compliment to you, but you keep pushing her away. I got more important things to do in the cosmos. You're the Christ figure. And she's coming to you because she needs you. She wants you. She has a need for emotional release. Is that okay? There was a time when you were alone as a man. And when she showed up, she could hardly wait to be with you. And you could hardly wait for this woman to walk through that door to want to focus on you face to face and begin to talk with you and empathize with you. And you empathize with her and the joy that you experienced on the heels of aloneness. And now it's an irritation. She hasn't changed. She's not ill-willed. She just has a need that you don't have. Is that okay? Now, ladies, this doesn't give you license to dump everything on him and just kind of go off on everything. Oh, this is great. He needs to empathize with everything. If he's really loving, he's going to listen to everything. No, no, no. Men are more linear, so you have to help them a little bit. You can't just start, well, it's what I call spider webbing. You know, he can come home and you say, guess what happened today? What? Johnny, they went outside and they had a fire drill and it was raining out there and he's got a cold, so I had to take him to the doctor. So that's the problem? Johnny's sick? No, that's not my point. Well, what's your point? Well, we went to the doctor. And you remember Mary, that nurse there? Did you know she's going through a divorce? In fact, did you know I dated, you know, that was the man that I dated when I was in high school. I had a crush on him. And, well, did you know that he is in construction now? He built this huge mall down in L.A. In fact, when we go down to L.A., I really want to go to that mall and see that. In fact, did you pick up my clothes at the cleaners tonight? I can't believe it. At about this point, he goes, you see, at a certain point, he starts to glaze. And then you say he's not listening. You're right. He can only collect so much information, truly. He's not right brain, left brain. So you can collect it real quick, and you love the juicies. New women can start with this point, and then you don't finish that point. It reminds you of this point. And the woman, oh yeah, and then you get on, and then that reminds you of this point. And you don't finish this one, you go to this one, and this one, you don't finish, and you go down to this one, and suddenly it looks like a spider web. And if you give women long enough, they'll come back and bring closure to all these things. Many times, within 30 minutes, there'll be closure on many of those points. Some of those stories have been going on for 30 years. It started with the children in diapers, now they're married and have grandchildren, and the story continues. Now, ladies, your husbands cannot spiderweb. So save the deeper, longer stories for your girlfriends. They live in the anticipation of some of this. But let him know. You got to help him. I'm true. Let him know what the point is. Because if he says, that's not the point, no, wait. You mean that's not the point? No. Is that the point? No, I'm not there yet. No, you gotta let him know kind of what it is. And you're not giving it away. Because he doesn't have that sense of anticipation. This is fun. This is fun. C is closeness, O is openness, U is understanding. Now P is peacemaking. Matthew 19:5 and 6, Jesus speaking, quoting that Genesis passage, "For this cause a man shall leave his father and mother and shall cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh." But then he adds, "Consequently, they're no longer two, but one flesh. What therefore God has joined together, let no man separate." Now, what I see Jesus saying here is that the two are to become one. And that doesn't happen just naturally. This idea that we are just soulmates naturally is not a biblical idea. It takes work. That's why he says, let no man separate it. That could be somebody from the outside. There are going to be factors that are going to work against your relationship. And it can also refer to within. Let not the husband or the wife be the cause of the separation. In fact, let me share with you, God intends for you to have conflict. 1 Corinthians 7:3 and 4. Let the husband fulfill his duty to his wife, and likewise also the wife to her duty to the husband. And it says this, the husband does not have authority over his own body, but the wife does, and the wife does not have authority over her own body, but the husband does. And I said, Lord, which is it? That inaudible voice, yes. God has designed conflict. It's His will that you have conflict. If you don't have any conflict in your relationship, you're not in the center of God's will. God intends for you to have conflict. Who's going to decide that? God intends for you to have conflict. Too much conflict is not His will. The absence of conflict is not His will. Where that middle ground is, you'll have to decide based on your temperament. But God has willed it. So don't freak out. In fact, Paul says in 1 Corinthians 7, if you marry, you have not sinned, but you will have trouble. He says it right there. And this is the point. God has designed it. So some of you think you've made a mistake because you have trouble. No, you're in the center of God's will. Some of you may be far more in the center of God's will than you have any imagination about. Really. The key is to differ with one another in loving and respectful ways. But you're going to differ with one another. Doggone it, I can't believe how disrespectful this feels. I'm probably going to come across unloving, but why did you back that car into the garage for the third time? You know, we're going to have these moments. But as long as we use the language of Scripture, the language of love and respect, we voice what we're feeling, but we also give them the benefit of the doubt, you can make it through. But when you start saying, nobody could love you, nobody could respect you, you will kill the spirit of your spouse. And you actually think you're going to motivate them. The key to motivating somebody is meeting their deepest need, not by cutting their air hose. Only a fool would conclude that. So you and I can come to a point where we actually have power. We can do something new and different. It's a little risky, but it's not half as bad as we might even imagine. God begins to show up in this. But I'm going to tell you, He is going to bring about some conflict. And the question is, are you going to be able to resolve these things and reconcile? How do you go about being one? How do you go about being soulmates? How do we do this? Well, let me unfold for you an idea that women resolve conflict, what I call by bringing it full circle. They've done studies of little girls playing hopscotch, and the little girls, Sally and Mary, and they're playing, and suddenly they'll get into a little conflict. Now, they're playing hopscotch as a means to building friendship, sharing secrets, and being best of friends. And they're not playing hopscotch for the game's sake. They're doing it because it's friendship building. But then Sally says something to Mary that offends Mary. And Mary says, I can't believe you said that, Sally. You're not my friend. Well, I can't believe you just said that to me. You're not my friend. I don't like you. I'm never going to talk to you again. Well, that's fine with me. I'm never talking to you again. And they stomp off on one another. But then they come back together 15 minutes later or 15 hours later. And it's interesting. They've researched this. What they'll do is they'll start ventilating negatively, spewing out what they're feeling. And then one will eventually say, well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said that. No, you know what? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have said what I said. Well, but will you forgive me? Yes, I forgive you, but will you forgive me? Yes, I do. And then they'll tear up and maybe hug. And then one tends to be humorous and she'll say something silly and the other throw her head back with laughter. And then they'll wipe the tears away and they'll start playing hopscotch again. It's what I call bringing it full circle. Having a joyful relationship, suddenly a conflict, momentary separation, come back together, ventilate. I'm sorry, will you forgive me? Will you forgive me? Yes, yes. Something humorous, head back and laughter, start playing hopscotch again. Now little girls grow up and marry a man, and they think that everything's going to be brought full circle. But halfway through he says, drop it, forget it, it's over with. I don't want to talk about it anymore. You see, because the way men conclude things in conflict is a little bit differently. If I have a best friend, and we've been friends since we were 8 years old, and now we're both 25, and I borrowed his baseball glove, and my dog ate it. So I come to Bob, my friend, and said, I can't believe it, my dog ate your glove last night. He what? I knew I shouldn't have given you my glove, Emerson. I can't believe it. I had that glove for 8 years. Where was your brain? I can't believe it. Oh. He goes into the kitchen. Now what do I do when my best friend's mad like that? I keep my distance. I just let him calm down. Because I know his beats per minute are going through the roof. He's moving into warrior. He's moving into... I don't go, Bob, you come back here and talk to me. That's sick. But after 15 minutes or so, I come to the doorpost and I say, my dog's not going to see the sun. I'm killing him tonight. And I got you a new glove. I paid $400 for it, but it's not going to replace the one. That was irreplaceable. What does my best friend say? Oh, drop it. Forget it. The baseball game's on. Here's your Pepsi. Let's go watch the game. Now, what does my best friend mean when he says that to me? Drop it. Forget it. It's over with. And don't bring it up again, Emerson, or you just remind me how stupid you are. So men and women get married. And he says halfway through the conflict, drop it and forget it. And gentlemen, this is where we have to be men of honor. She has to bring it full circle. And this is where it gets really tough, because at some point, I need to say something to Sarah that's very difficult. And instead of me defining myself, which is interpreted by her as defending myself, and when I defend myself to her, I'm actually blaming her because she tends to personalize things more than I do, and she sees me as justifying myself, and there are many times she'd walk off throwing her hands up in the air. It's me, it's always me, I'm always to blame. And so I had to come to a point where even if I felt she was 80% guilty, the Lord spoke to me, own up to your 20%, Emerson, and don't go with the 80%. Even if you think you're righteous, and you're probably not, but even if you feel that way. So I say to Sarah, I'm sorry for being unloving, will you forgive me? And it's amazing to me that when I take care of the 20%, the 80% tends to take care of itself. And furthermore, there's an axiom in the females, and it's an axiom of moving into self-deprecation. Well, it's not you. I'm worse. I'm badder than you. Will you forgive me? I was really worse. And every man here knows that about her. The question is, do we want to trigger what is so easy to trigger? And then we're resolved and reconciled. It works almost every time, but I've got to stay off blaming her. And just simply say, I'm sorry, will you forgive me? And what's interesting, again, if my wife is reacting in disrespectful ways, maybe it's her way of trying to say, I'm trying to resolve this thing, I'm trying to reconcile it, I'm coming at you to ventilate because I'm wanting to bring this full circle. But she will ventilate in ways that come across disrespectfully to me, and at that point in time, I try to calm myself down and go off by myself, and she chases me into the kitchen. You're just irritating me, you're just picking a fight. And see how we get confused? We're both good-willed people, but some of you are on the edge of divorce because that's the scenario, and it was never ill-willed. It was just male and female, pink and blue, designed by God, and He intended the conflict, and you've misread it all. And you have hate. Some of you have bitterness in your soul, like my mom and dad, until they found Christ and things began to change. And I wet the bed until I was 11 because I couldn't stand that tension. And I cried myself to sleep at night. And some of you have kids who have mommies and daddies who are good-willed and they're wetting the bed emotionally because you never figured it out. And you were so close. But you can. You can. C is closeness, O is openness, U is understanding, P is peacemaking, loyalty, and then one more, and then we'll be dismissed. Being completely committed to her. Loyalty. Malachi 2:14, the wife of your youth, she is your companion and your wife by covenant. There it is. She is your companion and your wife by covenant. You made a covenant with God and with her. Most of us here made vows before a judge. Most of us beyond that to a pastor before a congregation of witnesses. For better, for worse, for richer, for poor. Didn't we? Malachi 2:16, though, says, for I hate divorce, says the Lord. I hate divorce. This idea that God wants me happy, that is, I don't read that in Scripture. He wants to bless you, but He isn't saying I want happiness if that means circumstantially I remove you from a marriage that has conflict, which is my will for you. Unless there's downright evil confirmed by 2 or 3 witnesses and there's a series of facts and the eldership and the spiritual people around you would all confirm that this is an evil-willed man or an evil-willed woman, you are way out of line in your judgment. And the sad thing about this is Malachi says, in some ways you won't get it in the throat, your children will. And some of you need to come to a point as a woman of love and a man of honor that you do the right and righteous thing for the sake of your children, because there are consequences that are so serious that some of you are completely blind to them. But we come to a point where we say, I'm going to do what is right. I thank God for my mom, who never badmouthed my dad. I took a butcher knife once and said I was going to kill my dad, and my mom freaked her out, which is one of the reasons she ended up sending me to military school. I had no intentions of doing that. No intentions of hurting my dad. I was just so angry and the pain in my soul. But my mother never badmouthed my dad and said, your daddy lost his daddy when he was 3 months old. He doesn't know how to be a daddy. That was her mantra. Ongoing, ongoing. And I took my anger out on her. She never badmouthed my dad, and instead eventually was instrumental in leading my dad to Christ. Both of them are in heaven, and I'm in the ministry today. But my mother could have moved in for the kill. She could have sought popularity with my spirit rather than my venom. She could have moved in and said, you're right. Your dad is despicable. She never did it. Why? Because she came out of suffering. Her dad was in a wheelchair all of his life. She had 7 brothers, 5 of whom died before they were 12. I never really realized why my mom was positive until I realized the extent of her suffering. And I am the recipient of my mom's decision never to badmouth my dad, who I badmouthed. But for me, gentlemen, as a man to man, we are called to be loyal to this woman. And most of us know she's a good-willed woman. Yes, she's nasty. Yes, she's verbal. Yes, she's venomous. The estrogen can kick in and she can choose just the right word that rips our heart. But it's her way of trying to get through to us, not to kill us. And will we trust her heart, even though she's squeezing the arrows? You know, she's a one-man woman. She wants to know if you're a one-woman man. And Job made a covenant with his eyes and made that commitment. She senses in her heart that, but she sees you, for instance, watch other women, and that's really hurtful to her. It'd be like her coming home and saying, you know, Joe down the street got his 3rd promotion. He looks like Atlas. All the men seek his counsel. All of his kids are national champs in their soccer team. Why don't you be more like him? That's what she feels when she sees you look at other women. That's just one little symbol. It's huge in her world because as she ages, she begins more and more insecure. And so she'll say, do you love me? Yes, I told you that 14 years ago. But she's not asking for information. She's asking for reassurance. Do you love me? Do you love me? You know, Dr. Dobson talks about this couple that really impacted his life, and they were friends. And he says this about Keith and Mary. They were married more than 40 years ago. Shortly after their honeymoon, Mary was stricken with polio and became a quadriplegic. The doctors informed her that she would be confined to a wheelchair for the rest of her life, and it was a devastating development, but Keith never wavered in his commitment to Mary. For all these years, he has bathed and dressed her, carried her to and from her bed, taken her to the bathroom, brushed her teeth, and combed her hair. Obviously, Keith could have divorced Mary and looked for a new, healthier wife, but he never even considered it. And Jim said, I admire this man not only for doing the right thing, but for continuing to love and cherish his wife. Then Jim says this, though the problems you and I face may be less challenging than those encountered by this family, all of us will have our own difficulties. How will we respond? And then he says this powerful sentence, some of us will give up on marriage for some pretty flimsy reasons. Decode. Is she reacting in ways that feel disrespectful? Could it just simply be that she's insecure about your loyalty? And she's panicking, yes, and she shouldn't panic, and she should come across respectfully, and we'll coach her. But up to this point, she hasn't known how to do that. No one's challenged her that way. So she's panicked, thinking that you would understand that she's screaming something through her pink megaphone, and she just assumes that you have pink hearing aids, and you would be able to understand the cry of her heart on the marital bus ride. She's a good-willed woman. She's just been approaching you in imprudent ways. But will you make the choice to be the one who moves first? Because as the man, you are mature at this moment, and so you move first. I hope you will, because it'll work. And lastly, esteem. Treasure her above all others. Again, this salient passage, 1 Peter 3:7, you husbands, grant her honor as a fellow heir of the grace of life. Grant her honor as a fellow heir of the grace of life. In other words, women need honor, but women don't want to be viewed as queen. They want to be viewed as princess. And we're going to talk about tomorrow. He wants to be honored and respected. He wants you to look up to him because he sees himself as the umbrella of protection and provision over you. He feels the responsibility to die for you. He doesn't see that as a right. He sees it as responsibility and wants you to look up to him. No woman wants to look up to her husband as wants her husband to look up to her as the provider and protector. She doesn't want to be queen. She doesn't want to rule. She wants to be that special eye to eye, honored as the equal. There's a nuance here that's significant. But that is her desire to be treated and cherished as that equal. And she has a different point system. I know 4 men who bought their wives Mercedes. 3 of the women were livid because the men saw themselves in the red, and so they thought, I got to get out of the red, so I'll buy a Mercedes, and maybe that'll put me 50,000 points in the black. It took them 2 million in the red because she has a different point system. Gentlemen, if you listen to me, I'm going to save you a lot of money. Tomorrow, maybe go for a walk in the afternoon and just reminiscent. Go into the history of your relationship and just talk about how when you first met. She loves that. Women love to go back. That's why they always bring out the wedding books. We don't bring out the book, hey, Harry, look at my tux. You know, look at that, man. It's something. But she likes to go back. She likes to go back, and it just rejuvenates her feelings. That's why she always likes to bring up about other couples. When did you meet? They always bring that up. When did you meet? How did you meet? They love to do that. They get energized by it. So you maybe talk about that, and then pick up a flat rock, and that night pin something. I will always love you. Thank you for this day in the park. Well, that should put me in the black about 5 points. No, that puts you about 15 million. 15 million points. You see, she has a different point system. That's when you buy her the diet book, her spirit deflates. Because something that seems so little to you is huge to her, and something that seems little like the rock is huge to her. And now, project ahead 30 years. You died, and she's in a retirement center, and the grandchildren come over. Good morning, kids. What? Oh, that rock there. Oh. I wish you would have known your grandfather. He was something. He was... Hey, do you want some ice cream? Let's get some ice cream and cookies. Come on. The energy's still coming to her. You see, she's not wrong. She's just different. And what matters to her may be little to you, but it's big to her. And what you think should be little, not that big of a deal. Don't get so upset. It's just huge to her. Just like tomorrow we're going to say, what she's going to pass judgment on you is being so childish. I can't believe how childish you are, because your issue is not her issue. And it's so easy for her to pass judgment on you based on her strengths because she has no empathy for your weaknesses because she doesn't have those weaknesses. She doesn't get tempted by nudity, for instance. And we're going to talk to her about your vulnerabilities. And some women they're just passing judgment severely. Well, so too, there are men who are passing judgment because this woman is so childish. I can't believe how sensitive you are. No, she's just a woman. He's a male. We have different issues. We have different metabolisms. We look at the world differently. Is that okay? And can we come to a point where we, in some way, understand that? That this one gal got off the phone and says to her husband, I just got off the phone with my sister. She's now taking a carpentry class. She's now building a rocking chair, and she took a gourmet class before that. She makes everything. She makes everything. What do I make? You make me happy, the husband said. So then she's going to be on the phone to all of her friends. He said, I make him happy. He said, I make him happy. And she'll repeat that for 6 months. She'll put it in her journal. He said, I make him happy. She'll go back and she'll be energized by that again. God has just wired her. There are certain words, just like the word of Christ to us. We believe the words of Christ as well as the ways of Christ. So too, you are the Christ figure in which you speak to your wife. It can be so little, but it does something to her spirit in a huge, huge way. Is she reacting in ways that feel disrespectful to you? Could it just simply be a way of her saying, I need reassurance? Let me conclude with this. Ladies, be patient with your husband. He's going to be slow. You just say it right up front. You're going to be the hare saying, do it, do it, do it. And he's going to be in a turtle in a shell. And you're going to pack on the shell. Come on out. And he's going to tuck back in. He's thinking about it. Come on, come on, come on. This is easy. Do it. I'm expressive responsive. You be expressive responsive. It's so easy. It's so natural. Yes, for you. He's got to think about it. Now, there was this couple married. They'd been married like 18 years. They had a cat that was 14 years old. Both had careers. They didn't have children. She was on the road with her career. Her mother, who was a widow, had just moved in with them. And the wife, who was on the road, calls home about 3 days after being on the road just to see how things are going. Her husband answers, and she says, how are things going? He said, your cat's dead. Well, she had this cat for 14 years. She loved the cat. That was like her child. She said, my cat's dead. I can't believe my cat's dead. I can't believe that. This is, oh, my heart's broken. You know, I can't believe you just said my cat's dead. You just blurted it out. You know, you could have said something like, the cat's on the roof. Call me back in 5 minutes. And then I could have called back in 5 minutes, and you could have said, call me back because the cat's fallen to the ground and the fire department's coming to try to resuscitate it. And then I could have called back in 5 minutes and you said the cat's gone to cat heaven. But as soon as the cat's dead. Can't believe all you men are alike. Oh, forget it. How's mother? She's on the roof. Now, the reason I like that is that his heart was in the right place. He was trying to apply what he just learned. Your husband is going to try to apply this. He may not bring you flowers, but he's going to fix the faucet. He's going to think through slowly how to do this, and it won't be as quick. Give him some grace. Let's close in prayer. Father, we thank you for the wisdom of your word and the truth that we find. And our hearts are filled with laughter. There's a time to cry and a time to laugh. We thank you that we can be guided. Thank you for these dear folks. And I pray that their inner heart, the longing of their soul, that you would hear that and answer the cry of that heart. Through Christ we pray. Amen.